Now, Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy. That's what it was.
Bearded Texan podcast, bruh. That's how we talk here.
But religion is something that you could spend, well, I said you could spend people, religious people, literally spend their entire lives trying to comprehend it.
Mm-hmm.
And you could never get past a certain point, I don't think. Because at a certain point you're like, well, it's incomprehensible. I can't comprehend that.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. There's some people I know that are very intelligent, that are super religious. You go to church every Sunday, but I think you do yourself some favors by understanding early on that this is kind of out of my range of comprehension. Gosh.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I can hardly articulate words.
Well, it's
I'm glad you haven't had as much bourbon as me.
well, thinking, I mean, just if one were to really sit down and truly ponder on what God is and what it means to be a Christian, like deeply ponder on it.
Yeah.
Then it pushes anyone, I don't care who they are, even the most intelligent, the highest IQ ever recorded on earth, it pushes any individual to the absolute limit of their cognitive ability. Because we're human, and to try to understand something like God is just, it's impossible.
I think we've talked in the past, but and it gets a little touchy too, but I don't want to speak for you, but at times I have been fairly agnostic. I went back and forth between being super religious to not at all, to doubting everything, to having a great appreciation for it all, and becoming pretty religious again. What do you think leads to that? Because I think you and I, and again, I don't want to speak for you, but I've known you a long time. What is it about trying to wrap your head around believing in God that creates that?
The lack of understanding, for one.
Yeah.
Because it's easy. So I could, and this is the problem I had for me, speaking from my personal experience, is it was shortly after I read through the Bible, and getting through Genesis is tough. Once you get past that, it's not as bad, but
Yeah, for sure.
But it was shortly after I'd read through it, and I was just like, I'll take it to a different, concept here in a minute, but it's far easier to disprove something in many cases than it is to prove it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you can look through and you can read the Bible and you can say, no. You can say, okay,
Bullshit.
I live in a world that is per the Creator, if you will. I live in a world that has natural laws. It has gravity, it has space, it has time. We live in a three-dimensional world, which is debatable for some people. Some people think that we live in a program.
Yeah.
And there's some evidence for that sometimes,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That we're...
And flat earthers.
Yeah, well...
We won't go there yet.
No.
Dumb bastards.
But you could look and you could say...
Joking.
So this,
Totally
is
joking.
this is one of the things for me when I was 8 years old. I'm like, wait a minute. How big was the ark? Okay. Yeah.
Best point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you couldn't put everything in there. You couldn't put all the animals. And wait a minute. I learned early on that, we have tectonic plates. We have Earth's tectonic movement. And there was Pangea and other things back in the day.
Yeah.
Way back in the day. And then the plates moved apart and they still are. So we actually have physical evidence of that today. You know what I mean? Some
West
are
Texas
subsiding,
earthquakes.
some are losing, and then
Yeah.
some are, the mid-oceanic ridge is still expanding.
Yep.
And so you see that, and you're like, okay, well, at the time of the writing of the Bible, from what we know of human history and the archaeological record, you see, and you're like, okay, humans have been around for about this long, in the historical record. If you look at archaeology, before that was this and this and this. You know what I mean? Like, you go all the way back to dinosaurs, and so you're like, all right, well, the ark was over in the Middle East, and they took 2 of every animal on the planet.
Only 2.
Well, only 2.
Only 2.
But let's not even get to that point yet.
Yeah.
But then 2. But I remember as a child, I was like, well, how did a skunk from North America, who doesn't exist over there, had no way of getting to that part of the world? And to be perfectly frank, the people in that part of the world didn't even know that North America existed. That wasn't even part of the world.
Wasn't even on the radar.
Didn't even know it was there. So, how did all those animals get there? And so that was the thing for me. That was when I first started saying, okay, perhaps not everything in this is true. Perhaps this is a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you see, you have other things like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is essentially the same story as Noah's Ark, just before.
I actually don't know much about that. Elaborate on that.
It pretty much what I just said. It's basically the same story as Noah's Ark, just prior to Noah.
Gotcha.
It's a flood.
How far
story.
ahead, or do you know?
Oh man, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But that's easily something
I got
you
you.
can find out. But so it was like things like that when I was a child. I was like, man, I don't know.
You're already skeptical.
And
at
that was
age
when
8.
my skepticism came in. Yeah, skepticism came in. Your words are wearing off on me.
Yep.
But yeah, so I was very skeptical then.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I was older in life where I really what I got to the point was, and when I decided to actually get baptized and become a Christian, is I came in my rational mind. I said, if God created me like He created all men and women in His image, that I'm made the way I am. I'm made to be the thinker and the questioner that I am on purpose. And so God wouldn't fault me for questioning things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to the point where I just decided, I was like, in all honesty, I don't have to believe everything that's in the Bible to believe the underlying message. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
To believe in God.
Yeah.
And so that has made me clash with other Christians, because they're like, no, if you don't believe everything that's in the Bible, then you're not a Christian. And then I'm like, well,
That's kind of anti-Christian right there.
and well, for me, and I'm like, well, so you're this feeble-minded human, and because you say it's not so, doesn't mean it's not so.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing, is people are just people. People are scared, tribal, fucked up creatures, man, who have tendencies that are oftentimes very selfish, And so people will say things to you like, you should do this, you should do that, because it makes them feel better.
Yeah, stop telling me that. Unless I ask for your advice, don't give it to me.
Yeah.
I take a personal offense to that, because I feel like most of the time I'm kind of killing things in life, even as a parent, and that sounds arrogant, but I am
Well, it's
extremely disciplined, and if there's one thing that you don't want to fuck up in life, it's parenting. And
Absolutely.
so I try to do my best. I try to guide them and direct them, not over criticize them, but hold them accountable, make them work hard. Don't let them give me bullshit excuses.
Mm-hmm.
even even in the future. So I talked to you earlier about my daughter giving me some kind of preteen issues and me not wanting to use the belt anymore and her kind of being pouty and leaning against the wall, and I'm like, oh, you're against the wall, do some wall sits. And afterwards I'm like, is she gonna hate exercise because I'm making her do wall sits as a punishment? But at the same time, it's better than the belt.
Oh yeah.
And you know,
They have to learn cause and effect though.
they do, and it really worked extremely well on her. She's like, I don't want to do 80 seconds of wall sits again. I'm going to lose my attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it with her. Like, I put in the work. And it's the same thing we talked earlier. Like, I was talking about you and Emma being super fit people and maintaining your body. I let myself go for a bit. And I had a few issues that I could really use to make excuses for that. But at the end of the day, there's no excuse. Like, get my ass out there, create a calorie deficit, ride my bike, lift weights. And since I started doing that and dropped 40 pounds,
It's life changing.
it is. My mental health, stress levels, I don't really have depression for the most part. Like a little bit after a breakup, you know. And I still need to drop
Expected.
40 or 50 pounds. But at the same time, I nutted up and I worked through it. And if I didn't have outdoor cycling or weight training, I would probably be pretty depressed. And a lot of people's issues, and we'll get into this, we're kind of segueing into it, but if you would just get your ass out there, get some vitamin D, put in some work, you're going to feel a lot better. We're not designed as humans to sit around on our asses all day in office jobs. We're supposed to be out there hunting bison and killing them and feeding our tribe. And either that or hunting and gathering. It all involves being outside. So people that have major
Which
depression,
is why our body creates vitamin D when we're in the sunlight.
yes. And so if everything comes easy in life and you have no physical challenge, you're going to be depressed as fuck, in my opinion. And since I've realized that,
America is rampant.
yeah, I mean,
depression.
I went from running half marathons up until my early 20s to kind of doing nothing. And I had some issues. I gained a bunch of weight. But really what I need to do is get off my ass and put in the work. And that's what I try to teach my kids too. Like, over the December holidays, the wind chill was -2. And I made a point to go out there and ride my bike for 20 minutes in -2 wind chill. And that's nothing. We're in Texas. You know, people listening from
Screw that, dude. That's
up north are like, oh, it's -30. Like, but if you read a lot of like workout outdoor stuff, like if it's below 20, you probably shouldn't be out there.
Can kill you, man.
Man, I bundled up and I was fine, but I did it to prove that to myself and my kids. My kids were like, Dad, like they were calling me. Like Cadence was calling me on my phone. I have my AirPods in.
Are you okay?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, Dad, it's cold. Why are you out there? And the wind was so high that day. It was like 40 miles an hour, -2 or 3 wind chill, and I was out there riding my bike. So what I did was ride back and forth to where I wasn't facing the wind so I could actually pedal and make progress.
Mm-hmm.
I rode back and forth like 15 times to get in my mileage.
Yeah.
And Cadence is like, good for her that she's worried about me.
Yeah.
But
You're setting an example.
that's what I was trying to do. Same thing with the wall sits. Like, life is not always easy. It's going to hurt like hell sometimes. And if you tell me right off the bat that when I tell you to do 60 seconds of wall sits, you get to 30 seconds. Oh, it's easy, Dad. I'm still being bratty. Why don't you do 80 seconds instead? Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And this is probably, I'm going to get from like freaking psychologists, this stuff just picked apart as far as parenting. But that's worked better than most things I've done.
Relationships with their children, though.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of them learn from being like alcoholics and drug addicts, and they have all this good advice.
Like, what do you do? I'm a psychologist. I'm a clinician, clinical psychologist.
Yeah, and some of them are great. They learn from,
Yeah. Well, how many children do you have? 2. Oh, boy or girl? Well, he's a non-binary, gender fluid, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah, man.
I don't know, man. I got way off topic. I'm scatterbrained, but people.
As I told you, I've dealt with it my whole life.
Yes, exactly. But people are too soft sometimes. And
Oh, we're totally soft.
obviously, I have a ways to go. I need to drop another 40 pounds, but get off your ass, quit making excuses, and put in the work.
So what I always tell myself, if I don't want to go to the gym or something, I'm always like, you have a choice today. Be a bitch, or you can be a beast.
Yeah, it's almost David Goggins, and that dude's insane and crazy, probably too far, but you're right.
I choose to be a beast.
Yeah.
And physical, like you have to be healthy. You don't have to exercise all the time if you eat right and things like that. You just need to do some kind of cardio and stuff. But I think people in general, Americans, God bless us, but we are soft physically and soft mentally, especially
Pretty
now.
much so.
And that's why it's so easy to sway, to sway people to say, yeah, well, here's all this. None of this is happening is your fault.
Yeah.
So if you bought into the modern narrative of a certain political persuasion, then you would say, well, I'm overweight. It's totally not my fault.
Just cater around that bullshit. Yeah.
It's not my fault.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm just as healthy as the guy that gets out there and, walks 2 miles a day and lifts 3 times a week. I'm just as healthy as him.
Yeah, bullshit.
Even though he's ripped and, has much higher testosterone levels and everything.
His lifespan is 20 years longer than mine, ultimately.
But I'm healthy, So, yeah, that's a tough one.